temperature, which is roughly what we've been experiencing, is about a 4% increase in evaporation and 15% reduction in runoff. Okay, this shows the consequences. This is record low diversions for irrigation in 2007-08, and it's going to be similar this year. So industry is under great pressure. In the climate context, we have been experiencing an average over the last 10 years, that's the flat red line at the bottom, equivalent to the worst case predictions for 2050 and beyond. Now, we have a variable system, so there's nothing to say that this is going to continue. We may have a flood, next year. Let's hope that we do. The worst case climate change predictions, we could expect something similar to what we've been experiencing over the last 10 years. A small reduction in rainfall produces a very large reduction in runoff in an arid system where you have to invest a lot of your rainfall in covering evaporative losses and seepage into the water table. Okay, just a couple of brief comments on climate variability and climate change. What we do know is that we have a variable system. Inflows are lower, but most importantly, over-allocation so overdevelopment for irrigation was not apparent in those previous droughts. Okay, we also have higher temperatures. And in terms of mitigation versus adaptation, I'll finish on that in my final slide, but this concept of climate shift was promoted to avoid a debate being bogged down in mitigation versus adaptation. We have to adapt to what we've been experiencing. We don't have a choice. For the first time, inflows being so low, urban water supplies have been threatened. Urban water supplies, as I said before, about 10%. Okay, so we've got to be more conservative with how we actually use our reserves when we have them. We've got to keep more in the bank. Okay, we've also implemented some contingency measures like cutting off wetlands that are actually connected to weir pools, and there is environmental cost associated with doing that. These are modified wetlands. Under natural conditions they would have been dry, but they're effectively replacing other wetlands that have been lost through drainage. So they still have environmental value. Okay, and drought strips away the rhetoric, reveals the true nature of water management priorities. We have had environmental flows introduced into the Murray-Darling Basin over the last 10 years. Those environmental flows are under pressure. Okay, we've now got these things in place to support irrigation. They were originally put in place to support urban water, but they continue in place to support irrigation. One of the very positive things that we've done is implemented a water trading system. So we have a fairly well developed now market for water. And last year, with record low water availability, we saw a record number of trade transactions, a relatively small volume, only 235 gigalitres, but 5,000 transactions. And that represented about 40% of the water that was actually consumed for irrigation last year. At record prices, nobody likes paying high prices for water, but the alternative is that they don't get it. And permanent horticulture would be lost. Okay, so Productivity Commission in Australia has estimated that the economic impact of this drought has been reduced by 50% as a result of water trading. Okay, just a couple of brief comments to finish off on mitigation and adaptation. Our new Prime Minister, just under 12 months ago, we had a change of government. Kevin Rudd has ratified Kyoto. One of his policies is to implement a cap and trade greenhouse gas emissions program. It's very ambitious. It's to be introduced by 2010. And there's a range of other incentives. In terms of adaptation, we have responded to this drought by adopting these new hydrologic sequences in our planning. So our planning is more conservative, and we are keeping more water in the bank. But the other major change is water policy reform, which is aimed at achieving long-term sustainability. So we're going to reduce what we actually take out of the river systems. Okay, my closing comment, this drought's been the driver for that adaptation, regardless of whether it's actually associated with human-induced climate change or not. It's a sequence in our hydrology that we must respond to. Okay, so mitigation is still important, but our argument about whether we implement water reform is not linked to mitigation. Thank you.